So, hello everybody. My name is Jelani, and welcome to the 28th actual episode of the DeSci Rising series put on by DeSci World, where our goal here is always to provide an opportunity for many of the wonderful projects on our growing DeSci World dashboard to just formally introduce themselves, update their progress, highlight their achievements, and just generally engage with both the DeSci world and wider DeSci community. Now, the idea behind all this is always that at DeSci World, we very much believe that more than the tech, more than the funding, it is the community leveraging these tools that will usher in many of the changes that we are all looking for DeSci to bring to the various legacy STEM industry. Now, in today's episode, I have the very great pleasure of speaking with Pablo Moncada Larotis, who is one of the founders and executive leads, and Mitchie McQuinn, who is the rocketeer and steward both at MoonDAO, which is an international collective focused on decentralizing access to space research and exploration. So this is going to be a great conversation. And so without all that being said, welcome Pablo and Michi. And thank you both for taking the time today to help us learn more about yourselves and a lot of the great work that you guys are doing at MoonDAO.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Awesome, awesome.
Yeah, thanks, Shalani.
Pleasure. So disclaimer, I had a chance so I've met Mitchie before because we live in the same city, and Pablo, we had the pleasure of meeting at ETH Denver, and I'd love to kind of get your perspective on how ETH Denver was for MoonDAO. But first and foremost, let's do a little bit of, round of introductions. So I'd love to hear about both of you, just kind of introduce yourselves, and also if you have if you can think about it, describe your foray, how you came into the Web3 space and the like.
Well, I'll let Pablo go first.
All right, I'll go first. Let's see. So, yeah, my background is as an engineer. I worked at Google for a few years, and when I left, I was working in autonomous cars. So on the perception side. So this is like the machine learning to figure out where the car is in space, and then you feed that over to another team that figures out what the car should be doing. I also worked in virtual reality at YouTube. So I worked on some like real-time rendering stuff. So you'd have a server out in the middle of nowhere that would actually do a bunch of the really heavy compute, and then it would render things to the client in real time. So you could have really complicated, really graphically intense things happening on your phone or on a VR headset, but the client could be really, really thin. And yeah, that was it sounds a bit nerdy, but it was really exciting. And then yeah, I also studied mechanical engineering. I've always been really into robotics. I worked on another project that was like a lower body exoskeleton to help people walk at Google X. Yeah, but I've always been in love with the idea of space, and what a lot of the times what I feel like what MoonDAO is trying to do is to make it easy for someone from their bedroom or their garage or whatever to actually have access to create a space startup or something like that. I think we're moving into a really exciting period in human history where you could have a 3D printer or a laser cutter, just in your house, and you can collaborate with people from all over the world, sharing CAD files and working together on like real space engineering. And this is really exciting. I think it's probably the first time in history that's ever been possible. And thanks to the declining cost of space, you have like three major forcing functions right now. You have that the actual cost per kilogram of sending things up into space is going down dramatically. The payloads are getting smaller. They're getting miniaturized, thanks to like a lot of consumer tech. And at the same time, that smaller miniaturized payload is becoming more powerful. So it's the costs are declining dramatically, and usually with you know with declining costs comes a new technological revolution. So I think that we're going to be seeing kind of like personal access to space very soon. So similar to like how it used to be massive government mainframes, sitting, in a in a like very very expensive facility, and that's how you did compute before with punch cards and all of this. Um, and now you have a personal computer, personal workstation. I think that's how our relationship to space is going to change soon, and people will have personal access to launch stuff into space, to access things that are in space, communicate. I mean, right now we're communicating through a satellite, but I think that's like things like Starlink are going to be revolutionary to the everyday person, and I feel like that's just scratching the surface. So yeah, I will pass it over to Mitchie. I'm really excited to be here with Mitchie too. Yeah, um, yeah, I'll throw it over to you.
Yeah, so my background definitely isn't as heavily credentialed as Pablo's is. I think that the reason why I kind of gravitated towards Web3 and got involved is because I've kind of always been, a bit of a punk at heart. I feel like the whole ethos of Web3 is so kind of anti-authoritarian, but also like just novel. I've always been intrigued by technology and obviously very interested in science like my whole life. But my Web 2 background was more in just marketing and web development. And so I spent many, many years doing that, basically just working as a freelancer, doing, WordPress websites and, and marketing things. But never really was satisfied with it. And yeah, it was back in, I guess, would have been around October of 2021 that, the metaverse was blowing up at that time. It was peak hype. And I was really interested in it. I mean, as a web developer, I figured, well, if this is going to be the next thing, I got to know all about it. And what really stuck out to me in all my research about the metaverse and things was the tokenomics behind some of these things. And well, it's kind of obvious now that a lot of tokenomics is really like Ponzi-nomics. It didn't. It made me realize all this potential of the blockchain technology and its impact for creating these new kinds of novel social structures. And so I learned at that point around October of 2021 about the term DAO and was immediately just infatuated. I couldn't stop thinking about like I had so many questions, just a ton of questions. And I spent months just reading about DAOs all the time, trying to figure out what even a DAO is, because there's so many different types of DAOs and people have different definitions, and there's so much new terminology to learn. And yeah, so it was about 3 months after I first discovered the term DAOs, I started to realize what DAOs could be, like how the future that I really wanted to see come out of all these developments. And that's when in about February, I discovered MoonDAO. And really, I was blown away at first because MoonDAO's model is unlike a lot of other DAOs. We're heavily focused on actually achieving real world results, and that was the thing that really got me excited, because that's what I was looking for, was a DAO that is focused on real world stuff. I'm really not into like DeFi basically, or anything like that. And so yeah, that got me really excited, and I was excited about some of the prospects that MoonDAO had in the pipeline at that time, involving sending YouTubers into space. And then when basically from February until the next October, like last October 2022, that's when I officially joined MoonDAO, because I'd just been lurking around. I was new to Discord, and that was completely overwhelming at first. So I didn't quite know how to get involved. I was really excited about MoonDAO's goals, but I was like, how does anything come out of all of this chaos in Discord? I don't understand. So it took me a while to learn MoonDAO's like governance practices and our whole proposal project system and everything like that. But by October, I was familiar with all those things. I was ready to get involved, and I just happened to jump in at the right time, because we were looking for we were starting up a new website improvement project to basically just redesign the website, which is what I've been doing for years and years. I'm pretty good at it. So I basically just put my hand up. I introduced myself. Pablo actually reached out to me. I was kind of starstruck. And yeah, I helped basically build the MoonDAO's, like, our current website, our current landing page, and took it from there. I mean, I've just been kind of sticking my finger in several different pies at MoonDAO, and worked my way to eventually becoming a steward. So yeah, that's basically my whole foray into Web3.
Those are two very interesting angles of, I think, the benefit and the boon that Web3 provides, right? The decreasing cost of technology, allowing for reducing the barrier for access to that technology, such that citizen scientists and people who just have, cursory interest or hobbyist level interest can actually start to drive significant impact in the development of new technologies, right? And then how do we capitalize that and orient that in vectors of intention, and
Yeah, I'm not a
that
scientist.
exactly, right? But like the coming together of these kind of things, right? Opening it up to all kinds of people, where you can have different disciplines coming together for a particular cause, just because, hey, you like space, and you happen to be an engineer, or maybe you have your hands on a 3D printer, or even you want to build a 3D printer. You can now all contribute and join a collective that pushes forward whatever um,
Yeah.
endeavor or larger mission that is. So in this case, MoonDAO is space. And so with that in mind, can you give us, either you or Pablo, can you give us an overview of what exactly MoonDAO is and how it came to be and where it's headed?
Pablo, this is a Pablo question.
Okay, yeah. So what MoonDAO is, how it came to be, and where it's going. Okay. Yeah, MoonDAO. So I guess we can start with the mission. So MoonDAO's mission is to create a self-sustaining, self-governing settlement on the moon. It's like the most ambitious mission that I have ever been a part of, and it sounds like very wild to say out loud, but yeah, I like. Okay, I was like revisiting these journals. I used to I write a lot, and this was like a journal from a few years ago, where I was having like a little bit of like an existential crisis about, like, like why should I do anything at all? Like in the grand scheme of things, everything kind of will dissolve if you look on long enough time horizons. Like what is evidence for, like how can I measure other people's impact throughout history? You can look at things like the pyramids, but even that is decayed and enormously, and is maybe just a testament to human suffering, really. And like you can look at maybe like authors like Homer, they probably had a really big impact because we're still reading them. So yeah, like I'm maybe going off on a little bit of a tangent here, but um, I was trying to figure out, okay, like, is it worth it to do anything at all? Because um, you know like what does impact really mean? Like our lives are really very tiny in the grand scheme of things. But one thing that I did kind of come away with, and 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 honestly, it sounds a lot like the same conclusion that like Elon Musk talks about this in interviews, is that well, your impact is greater if human recorded history extends out further and we come up with better questions to ask. So maybe maybe we won't solve some of these like fundamental dilemmas about like what we're doing, like who we are, why do we exist in the world, but if we increase our civilization's potential to come up with those questions through surviving longer and through preserving history better and all of these things, then well, we're we're giving ourselves a better chance at solving this great existential question that all humans face. So uh, yeah, and these are sort of ideas that were kind of in the back of my head for a long time, um, and I realized that I never really answered why I started looking into DAOs. The reason was I was working at Google and like not to like brag or anything, but like when you're working at Google, they give you a very huge salary right out of college, and you get free food, you get massages, um, you don't work that hard, honestly. It's a very relaxed environment. So the question is, why would anyone leave that? And um, yeah, I'd say the reason isn't because I thought Google necessarily was like a bad place or like but it felt as though my impact as one individual in this massive organization, that more or less do, like I don't know, it didn't feel like my impact was that huge there. And also Google at the time, this was like during like COVID, um, and like I think a lot of people saw like the immense amount of power that these like big tech organizations have on the everyday person's life, like billions of people, and the current system just really isn't sustainable in like addressing everyone's needs, because eventually these large organizations have so much power that they just become captured in one way or another. So like Larry Page in his first investor letter to Google wrote, Google will never be a company. We never intend for it to be a company. And nowadays it's like one of the largest corporate bureaucracies, and it's not like they like the I think this is just what happens when things get really big and centralized. And you look at like Web 1.0 and all of the early writers there, they were all about decentralization, all about reducing any sort of capture by any small group of people. But we sort of kind of lost our way a bit during Web 2. The money was just too good, I guess. Um, but yeah, like I feel like there was this movement towards a resurgence of like those like old Web 1 values, and it was coming at a time where it was like I feel like things were really hitting like an inflection point, or like really starting to boil over, and we were seeing these older systems start to corrode. And yeah, I felt very strongly that there has to be a better way. And I didn't even know about DAOs at the time. I quit my job to work on it was going to be like a way of like sharing things with your friends. It's like a at the time I was calling it like a distributed library, like, and it would use maybe smart contracts and we're trying to solve like a game theory problem when it came to like sharing items with other people. And then I started learning about DAOs and just got totally hooked on this idea of like, organizing, people in this like very scalable way, um, and doing it in a way where like people really have sovereign ownership over their own stake inside of the organization. Um, yeah, and then somewhere along the way, I got involved in a project called Constitution DAO, and that was like 1 week of my life where we like raised like I just yeah it's hard to like like it's such a big story that it's hard to just summarize in just a couple sentences. But basically, I found my way on Discord into uh, a, a a group, and then we were like, let's buy the U.S. Constitution, and then I like went totally like was working 16, sometimes like 20-hour days for like a week straight to make all that happen in the span of a week. And we raised like 47-48 million dollars. And then after that the whole world opened up, and yeah, things got really crazy. And I met Corey, who was the other co-founder of MoonDAO, and we were trying to figure out where we could apply this model to other things, and it didn't happen all at once. But space felt like something that is a universal that people from all over the world can get behind, and it's something that it's one of the few things that really truly unites people, regardless of where you are in the world and regardless of your background, your culture. Everyone looks up at the sky and wonders, what's going on there, and it's this like shared mystery. And yeah, it just it's like I didn't seek this idea very strongly. It's just sort of like found its way, um, like into my hands, and now I'm just trying to make sure that it survives, and trying to steward this idea as well as I can. But sometimes I look at it and I'm like, this is such a big idea. I it's a pretty heavy idea too. But yeah, I've got the help of Mitchie and Ryan and Rod and a bunch of other people that are here in the space, and so together it's been just an incredible journey.
Of the folks that I've met in the MoonDAO community, the ones that you've just named definitely are um, powerhouses in their own right in the space, right? Michi being extremely dedicated. Shout out to Rod for Luco. Manuel was here not too long ago. And Ryan I've heard about and had opportunities to see communicate in the chat. So it looks like MoonDAO has a very strong oriented community. And your structure, the governance structure, and how you guys have operational leadership seems much more mature for relative to other DAOs that I've seen in the space. And so let's talk about MoonDAO as an entity in and of itself. So my understanding is that its inception came behind the idea, this crazy idea of buying a moon rock, and that spun out eventually into what it is today. So can we talk about its structure and that kind of evolutionary process from where it was off of that one idea to where it's going right now?
Yeah, maybe Mitch, do you want to take this one?
Well, you know most of the history about the moon rock, but it is a pretty cool story. I want you to tell that aspect of it. I think just to give a broad overview though of like where MoonDAO is now, we're basically the internet's NASA. I think that's like the most concise way you could put it. It obviously is a broad generalization, but what we're really doing is addressing this issue of global cooperation when it comes to humanity's future in space. right now we're siloed off into countries that do not play with each other. They don't play well. They don't share information. And if you're in a country without a space program and you want to get involved in space, you don't have a lot of options. And so what MoonDAO is doing now is basically taking taking some of the power out of the hands of governance and these corporations and the elitists who run them, and putting those decisions about the pivotal decisions that are really central to humanity's future in space. We're putting those things on the public agenda. We're actually bringing a shared humanity into space. MoonDAO isn't, doesn't belong to any one country. We're global. And so I think that's really the broadest overview of like what MoonDAO is now. But yeah, it didn't start that way. It started more as kind of a joke, kind of like a meme in a lot of ways. Even our governance token Mooney is kind of a bit of a meme. And yeah, I'll let Pablo tell the story of the beginnings and the whole moon rock thing.
Yeah, that was a great overview, Michi. Yeah, so like I think that this is like maybe part of like an identity crisis that MoonDAO has, or not an identity crisis, but like we're trying to like be serious and do serious things, and we have a serious mission, and we have serious objectives, and we want to, like Mitch was saying, be like internet's NASA or the internet space program, but at the same time, like I want, like, something that I really hate about like the corporate bureaucracy is that it becomes sterile, and that it just becomes this sort of like um, like it's I think it's part of the structure of the organization where it's a bit top down, that you have to be part of this command and control structure, and you can't express yourself as an individual because there's sort of like NDAs you have to sign. There's all of these legal requirements, all of this stuff that's going on. The way that risk is works inside of a firm is such that everyone needs to fit into this like brick in the wall type thing. Not to be too dramatic, but what I love about the internet is that it's like totally unfettered, totally, like you go into some of these digital spaces and people are anonymous and just saying, insane things. And some of them are terrible, but some of them are brilliant, and they're these conversations that would never happen in the real world because no one is brave enough to say this sort of thing, or no one's, willing to say, lay out their experimental theory about whatever thing. And so I think that like the internet, in my opinion, produces some of the best discussion, most interesting thoughts, and I think it's because we allow people to just be themselves and maybe live in a pseudonym, and that makes them a little bit more comfortable about like sharing ideas. And yeah, so like meme culture, like meme coming from gene, it's meme is like the evolutionary process of spreading ideas to other people, and as they spread they evolve, and it is kind of comedy, and I feel like that's usually how it's meant, but I think it can be applied to more serious things too. So yeah, like MoonDAO kind of did start out as a meme, and but I think that's a cool thing. I think that's like it's a testament to like we're trying to um like capture this organic substrate of the internet, and do some sort of alchemy around it to have it produce real world results. And you know, like we don't want to destroy the native environment of the internet. You know, the internet is steeped in memes and comedy and this culture that exists. And I think you need to you need to let that survive inside of your internet organization, or it no longer becomes an internet organization. It just becomes another corporate bureaucracy. So yeah, that's like that's why I think it's important, you know, to preserve the sort of like meme ness of DAOs. We're all here as individuals, and no one's trying to coerce you into being anything different than just yourself. And you can leave whenever you want. You can come whenever you want. No one's, you know, there's not an employment contract where you get fired, you know, if you say something. Um, and yeah, I think it's important to preserve all of that.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think those are great points. And one of the reasons that I really like MoonDAO, and especially that origin story, which is why I've tried to have that be displayed here, is that it comes from, and I share a very similar perspective of entropy and chaos, whereby, you know, to me, coming as a scientist, coming from the scientific realm, I view science as a contact sport. But over the years, and if you look at science from its inception, it kind of follows the MoonDAO trajectory. It was a bunch of eccentric individuals just, you know, looking at hobbies and trying to explore and understand some of the fundamentals of what they perceive to be fundamentals, in a somewhat unorderly way, unstructured way. And that gave rise to a slew of innovation because you had that breadth to challenge, to a certain extent, to challenge and to try new things without really being hounded or structured in a way. And then eventually you got kind of what you talked about with Google. You have this capture event, and it becomes a lot more orderly and sterile. And over time, it starts to lose that creativity, that entropy that is needed to drive the actual innovation that originated that idea. And so I see a similarity between MoonDAO's inception as a meme to buy a moon rock to then transitioning to becoming the space operation of the internet. It's a very profound and important lesson that I think is captured within that ethos. And I see it as well, and I see it as well in the DeSci space, in the larger DeSci space. We're never going to incorporate the participants that we want to incorporate if there's no culture present within these DAOs and these organizations, right? People are not going to necessarily want to be there because they're not comfortable to be there. And that talks about, you know, beyond science, more of a social cultural aspect. But it's important to drive and make those to retain participants as they come into the space. And I love the model that you guys do. Now, on the other end of that spectrum, however, when you do allow and you have that level of chaos and entropy, it's great to seed and start innovation, but then to orient that and capture that in a way that you don't lose that energy, and bring it towards a direction. I think that's what Web3 is struggling right now to deal with. So you have great ideas, and the governance structures may not all be there. And so I like how, I'm very much interested in understanding how MoonDAO kind of developed and what is the governance structure at play within your DAO.
Yeah, Michi, I feel like you should take this one.
Okay. So yeah, the governance structure is relatively flat in MoonDAO. We do have astronauts, and right now Pablo is our only astronaut. He basically serves as, you know, the community leader, but he doesn't have any, you know, executive or administrative authority over the DAO. He doesn't have any, you know, it's not like a president or a CEO or anything like that. And then we also have a Senate that basically right now is filtering out or serves to like moderate the direction that MoonDAO is going in. And that Senate is formed by people who we call rocketeers. A rocketeer is anyone at MoonDAO who comes in and actually starts a project with us. And so in that way, we're kind of trying to avoid, you know, creating a bunch of bureaucrats. Like we don't want, we want to reduce bureaucracy as much as possible. And so yeah, we have a Senate which votes on incoming proposals. And once those are passed through the Senate, it goes out to member vote, where everyone in the community gets to have a vote in this. And of course, this all revolves around Mooney, which is our governance token, and vMooney, which is what basically represents the voting power that you get in exchange for staking Mooney. And it's a little more in depth than that. We have a lot of documentation on our processes, and we're constantly improving our governance as well. We're making changes all the time, and I feel like it's we've definitely had some hurdles. We've definitely made some mistakes, but we've learned from all of them, and we get a little less stupid every time we go through another round of governance, or go through our quarterly distributions. I guess that's another aspect of our governance I should mention, is that we do reward payments retroactively. So it's kind of hard to put labels on what our governance structure is, because I think just so many of these rules are being written right now. And I know that because we're the ones writing them. But I would say we're a meritocracy of sorts. We're very democratic. Our aim is to really democratize access to space. And I don't know where else I should go into dig into that, but I guess that's a broad overview of our governance process.
It's very interesting, and it sounds very organic and almost modeled after an evolving system, right? I think we talk about in the space, it almost becomes an echo chamber where we, DeSci's here, Web3's here, oh, it's been here. But if in the grand scheme of things, everything is so new, everything is a learning curve, everything is an experiment at this point in terms of what are the best operating practices to move forward in a particular endeavor, especially in a DAO that has so many components. And MoonDAO is a very large DAO. What size is your guys' community, if I may ask? If you even know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Also, I'm not sure by which metric we should be using. Pablo, do you have some more concrete answers on that?
Well,
in the Discord, how many people do you have?
One, I guess, quantitative metric is how many wallets hold the token, which is around 12,000 wallets. But I'm sure some of those are bots and and all of that. But yeah, that's one way of looking at it. Our Discord has like 40,000, but or something like that. But there's definitely bots there. Yeah, I feel like a central question to a lot of Web3, and is like, what is a person? I know that sounds like it's a very difficult thing actually to figure out what is and is not a person. And like Sybil attacks, like I feel like that is like the core of the issue with any sort of governance, is how do you avoid Sybils. So
and have you guys suffered from Sybil attacks internally, and how have you guys handled that?
Yes. So
okay,
let's see. I think that the best example, or the best. So yeah, we had one of our Blue Origin tickets. So we purchased a ticket, or two tickets to go to space, and then one of them, we had the great and very difficult idea of going, let's do random chance. Everyone gets one of these NFTs. We wanted them to be free because we wanted to go, hey, it doesn't matter how much money you have, doesn't matter if you have $1 or like $1,000,000. Everyone gets the same chance, and you can only get one of these NFTs, which is like it's in a world where like people are hungry. Like if you give them the opportunity to game a system, they will try, and that was a very gameable system. So we what we decided to do is we tried to use kind of like the most strict like KYC. Like we literally asked people to submit like an ID and then a photo of themselves. We deleted all of this data, but we like tried to be as strict as possible. And the stuff that we saw was just absolutely insane. Like there are, um, I mean, some of you definitely know this. There are like bot farms in like Indonesia and Kenya and different parts of the world that you'd never expect, where people sell their identities for like pennies on the dollar. And yeah, so we saw tons of bot activity during the Ticket to Space NFT, and we tried to remove them as they came. Just all right, kind of pattern matching. All right, we just got thousands of people from Indonesia, and all at like these like regular intervals. Okay, well these are probably bots. Um, yeah, it's a very very difficult problem, but uh, compounding on that problem is that the solution like that I'm seeing is like a non-anonymous solution. Like I hated the idea that we were collecting anyone's ID. I thought it was terrible. But after looking at like what the alternatives were, we were like, okay, like this is gonna be what is most expensive for bots to like actually get the IDs. And yeah, like I think solving governance will end up being solving Sybil resistance, and it's a very difficult problem to solve. It's like an information theory problem, and it's kind of like what Bitcoin sort of solves. And yeah, I think that yeah, I'm very interested in this. If people are thinking about this in the audience and want to share their thoughts, I'd love to hear them. Is yeah, I think there's a dystopian future with this too, where we record everyone's eyeballs, and then we use that to determine whether or not someone's a person or not. But even if you do that, though, you can still buy those people's identities. Like you could still have hundreds or thousands of people doing your bidding, and they are real people, but they're behaving like bots. So
Yeah.
it's very difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons why I'm wanting to bring this up is that this is a major concern for impact-driven DAOs, right? And I would argue that the vast majority of the DeSci DAOs are impact first. They're generating utility. The whole premise is to achieve an actual particular goal, whether it be conservation or funding of research or women's reproductive health or what have you, and understanding how important it is to define a resistant and anti-fragile governance structure when you're dealing with real world activity as drug development or even just not even just but like space technology development. All of this is very important, and some things that can't just be factored in after the fact once you have these things up and running. And so as a general lesson to those in the space that are building out their infrastructure, whether it be DAO or at least collective commons, you need to factor in the importance of this governance as it relates to what you're trying to do. And so one of my questions, because we are focused on the research aspect, and going a little bit into like what is the user flow for MoonDAO? What kind of projects are you guys looking to tackle? And if I am a participant who is interested in space tech or what have you, how do I come in like incorporate that into MoonDAO? What's that like?
Well, I just want to drop in real quick for anyone in the audience that one of the projects that we completed recently was actually sending a YouTuber, Kobe Cotton from Dude Perfect, into space with one of the two Blue Origin tickets that we purchased, and so we did that. we actually sent someone into space, which I think is mind blowing. And yeah, when it comes to getting involved in MoonDAO, the first step really is just getting into our Discord and finding your way around there. We have, an onboarding flow built into our Discord, and we have an ideation channel. And ideas are really the like heart and soul of MoonDAO. They're our most valuable resource, and it's really one of the reasons why I stick around at MoonDAO and I'm here every day. It's because we have just a community of people with crazy, cool, and awesome ideas, and we love having new ideas. So there's also potentially, if you already have a company or some type of mission or something that is aligned with MoonDAO's efforts, we are very focused on partnerships in general. We're working right now on incorporating a partnership branch into our governance processes, but we do have some major partnerships right now, and they're resulting in some pretty big projects that we have going on. So the top 3 that we have right now are LifeShip, Zero G, and our documentary project. Just as a broad overview of those, with LifeShip, what we're actually doing is sending people's DNA and their digital files and like loved ones' ashes to the surface of the moon on a lander. We're partnering with LifeShip, the company that makes these kits for sampling the DNA, and we're doing that as like basically a biobank on the moon. It's, I think, a really just the idea of it is really enchanting. That your DNA could be there for millennia, for a very long time, and we don't know. Like we don't know what will happen with it, but it'll be there.
Yeah, it's important to note that the DNA is not like stored and is never sequenced. It's like your physical DNA that goes up there. Yeah, not like a digital representation. It's like in amber, in like a synthetic amber. Yeah, it's so wild.
Yeah,
It's like a person's time capsule. It's like you time capsuled yourself
exactly.
and launched it and kept it on the moon. That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and the thing I love about it too is that this project is going to be like, I'm expecting it to be quite messy in a very beautiful way. I really want to see just humanity has had ventures in the past where we've sent information about our species and whatever out in, like, with Voyager and whatever, out into space, right? In this case, I feel like it's really going to be like authentic humanity, like pictures of people's cats and whatever, just real stuff. That's fun, and I just really love that idea that we'd be putting that information on the moon. The other big project that we're kind of given a little drop on right now, so this hasn't been officially announced yet, but it will be soon, is a zero-G flight with NASA astronauts Doug Hurley and Nicole Stott. Basically, it's a pretty, it's going to be a big event. And essentially what we're doing is you can buy a ticket to go on this. There's only like 22 seats, I think, available for purchase, but you can also join our community and win a ticket in a contest, or also just enter our raffle to win the ticket as well. And essentially you get to go up on a parabolic flight with NASA astronauts and experience weightlessness with NASA astronauts. There's a lot more that's built into that package, including dinner with them as well, and it's just going to be a really amazing opportunity for the people who get to go. I think that we're thinking a lot about building these kinds of experiences out and really pushing those forward as a revenue model for MoonDAO. And so far, this project seems to be going quite well. built the landing page for it. Humble brag, but yeah, it's pretty exciting, and
That's a really great project,
yeah,
or a really
yeah,
great opportunity for participants. And so you mentioned that the idea here is to decentralize access to space and then also space research. And I know, and I've noticed in your community that you have a quite a wide demographic of participants. Like you have a Chinese, a big Chinese community. You guys do a lot of translation of your content in either Mandarin or Cantonese for that participation. So, assumedly, do these individuals and people across the world that are participating in MoonDAO, do they also have that same opportunity to participate in this kind of flight situation, flight project?
exactly. Yeah, we're doing this in the true spirit of MoonDAO, which is like really giving access to everyday people. So there will be some people who are just everyday people getting this chance to go up for free, and to have this experience. And so
That's really cool.
yeah, and on that same thread, the last major project that we have, I mean, we have a lot of projects in the works right now, but the last like major, like big one, right, that I want to mention is our documentary. So as I mentioned, we bought 2 tickets with Blue Origin, and one of them we used to send a very famous YouTuber into space. The second one was raffled off and won by a member of our community from China, and we will be sending him into space as well. Right now, it's kind of pending on a few things, getting him his visa, but also, as you know, there has been a few delays with Blue Origin's launches for the past few months because they ran into some technical issues. But we will be sending just an everyday person into space. It will be a first for, for science and for humanity. And really, that's the true spirit of MoonDAO. I feel is increasing access in that way, and also when we send Jan in, he'll be the first Chinese citizen to go up on an American rocket, which will be pretty
Big.
historic.
Yeah, that's big. That's really big. It's nice to see a DAO and a community collective, an internet community state, kind of heading up that breakdown of international, I guess, borders and boundaries. That's really interesting. Um, so as we approach the top of the hour, and we're not quite done yet, but if there are people in the audience who want to ask questions, please feel free to come up and put in a request, and I'll bring you up on stage. To kind of lead that off and to jump off of what we just mentioned, how are you guys dealing with the issue of international interaction, right? Like, different nations have different space organizations. And so if you're bringing in, for example, Chinese populations or whomever else across the world into American-based uh, space opportunities, are there issues with that from the government standpoint, from the legal standpoint, and how are you guys kind of facing that, or have you run up into those kind of challenges?
Yes, those challenges definitely exist. They're very real. ITAR regulations are a thing that basically prevents basically any companies or governments from sharing information with each other about technology related to space, because obviously, a rocket can be used to send someone to space. It can also be used to send a nuke across national borders, right? So they're very, very. There's a lot of laws that yeah.
Oh, so Rod has a go ahead, Rod.
Guys, I'm sorry for stealing your attention, but I've just got scammed. There is a guy who follows all DeSci community, who knows what's happening, who attends a lot of our meetings, who reads a lot of our documentation, and he stalks us. He knows a lot about us, about all of people in DeSci. Like, it's crazy, but Gitcoin round would happen soon, and everyone has to be really careful. The guy really been following me for several weeks. He attended a lot of events at MoonDAO, a lot of calls on Discord. So he spent like, I don't know, tens of hours trying to figure out what's going on. So he really knows the context, what's going on. He knows about all of us. Sorry for stealing your time, but we have to be really careful. And on DeSci group on Telegram, like the guy stalks a lot of people. A lot of people already contacted. Like, sorry for stealing your time, but it's crazy.
No, it's all.
Yeah, this well, I think I know who it is, and yeah, I like recently I've been impersonated on Telegram like multiple times, and I guess now on Discord too, and yeah, it's a real problem. It's yeah, I don't like yeah. Sometimes yeah, crypto
It's
is
not only you. He also tried to impersonate Boris from Gitcoin. Sorry for interrupting you, but like it's a really huge problem for the whole community. Sorry for interrupting you, but it's not only
No,
you.
that's a good warning. That's a good warning for everybody. And I saw it kind of going on. Just disclaimer to everybody, this is deviating from the actual point of our conversation. But um, I think it's actually an important point to bring up because to me, that's a sign of success of the DeSci space, right? When people start to impersonate us, um, and seeing that there's opportunity to be had in this space, I think is a metric, is the internet's way of showing us that we're actually burgeoning into something that is concrete. So I tend to try to look at things on the bright side. But yes, everybody, please be safe out there. There are scammers galore. DeSci is going to be attractive to people because, like we said, and like we've demonstrated, there's a lot of real impact, real world things that are going on, sending people to space, opening up space access, not just from an individual perspective, but a research endeavor perspective. Um, and then all other forms of science. All of that is happening. So be wary, be mindful, and be vigilant. Pablo, I know Richie, you popped off because I think you had issues, and you were just talking about the international, constraints that exist with this. I'd love to really talk about that very briefly before we wrap up, because similar to your endeavor, right, in the traditional, in the biomedical sphere, there is, embargo is not the right word, but there are international secrecy laws that exist whereby you can't share, or people, governments frown on sharing a lot of tech innovation across borders. And so I think you guys are the most mature project that may have run into that. And so as a kind of a guideline or the beginning of a standard operating procedure, how have you guys dealt with this kind of issue from the space angle?
Yeah, it's a great question. And also, I just quickly want to say that I love that perspective of a success metric being the number of scammers. It's kind of true, in like such a strange way.
I
Yeah,
know.
we're talking about how to measure, like the size of a community. Maybe it's the number of scams that you've encountered.
Yeah.
But let's see. Yeah, the international collaboration piece. I mean, it's quite crazy to think that like when we started this project, I don't think any of us like realize, or like we're caught in this position, like no one came into MoonDAO thinking like, oh, we're going to be brokering an international deal between China and the United States to send the first Chinese astronaut over to space from the United States, like, but this is like, it's serious, and like the Chinese government is like aware of this, and so is the U.S. government, and like I don't think that yeah, like I don't think anyone could have anticipated that this would have been the situation that we find ourselves in, but yeah, we exist in sort of uh like a Cold War era sort of regulations, where there's sort of this paranoia that prevents people from cooperating and working together. Um, but yeah, actually, well, hey, it's almost like the same as what you're saying with the scammers. Like, I think the impact of a technology can also be measured in its negative use. So like, space and rocket technology is so powerful and it can be measured in that power by also its destructive capability. And like our entire space program started because we wanted to bomb Russia. Like we wanted to literally nuke Russia. Like that is why we have rockets, and that's why we go to space. Like that, it's like I recently did a tour of like the early space sites, and like I don't know, like I can't imagine what was going through their minds at the time. Like we have Rod right now in our audience, and Rod was born in Russia, but there's this like meme on the internet of like, um, it's funny to describe a meme in words, but I'll try my best. It's like two governments that are like at odds and fighting each other and like wanting to kill each other, but then two like based like the based guy meme, that the with the beard that says no.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
that, but like one guy from the US and another guy from China, another guy from Russia, and they're like, we're bros. Like it doesn't matter what these like I think that it gets pretty deep. I think that we're witnessing right now the dissolving of the nation state. And I know that's like a really big statement to make, but like there are mathematical grounds for that. Cryptography gives people individual sovereignty and individual rights in a way that, like, it used to be gold would give people this sort of like ability to opt out of any sort of national currency, or and now that's Bitcoin, it's Ethereum, it's all these things. And I think with this, like it's like the people claiming back power and going, hey, we actually don't need these massive uh like like we talked about like big tech, right? The biggest company, the biggest corporate bureaucracy is the nation. And like it seems obvious to me, at least, that these nations aren't providing that much benefit these days to the everyday person. And it's quite wild to say this, but I think it's like we're like I'm I'm not a revolutionary. I'm not saying that let's burn down the nation, but it's more maybe just pointing out a technological fact, which is that cryptography is very powerful, and this allows people to actually own and have sovereignty over their own data and economic data. They can be their own bank. We don't need banks anymore. And I think that this is we're we're in maybe like the second inning of this revolution. There's going to be many more to come. But yeah, we this causes, like, we need to rethink so many things about what does national security look like in a world where people do have sovereignty, and can hold their own money, and go through international borders without um, like you can't confiscate people's bank accounts anymore. You can't silence them financially. Like the ability of the state to control and to impose its power on the everyday person is now a lot more limited. I'd recommend people read a book called the Sovereign Individual, that they like is incredibly prescient and walks through the like how cryptography basically leads to this future where nation states don't have as much power because they can no longer steal or take money away from people very easily at the click of a button. Yeah, so this is a very long-winded way of saying that like the people are the captain now. It's kind of like the meme. And it's not like I'm not trying to propagate that meme and you know, be a revolutionary like I was saying. I'm just saying that this is just a mathematical fact, and we need to deal with that. We need to deal with this new reality that we exist in. And you know, like we can be scared and anxious about it and go, oh my god, you know, people are going to have, you know, access to ITAR quote unquote secrets, which, by the way, like, you know, every major nation now can create rockets. I don't know what we're hiding necessarily at this point. You can read textbooks on this, you know, like, so that part is confusing, at least. And you know, you talk to anyone that runs a space company right now, and the amount of just overreach from the government and sort of bureaucracy that is imposed on them through ITAR and all of this stuff is it's almost like laughable. Like they joke about it, about like how silly and how stupid it is, but they just have to do it because it's, you know, the way that it works. Because like I said, that these are all nukes that people are using, that were repurposed for space. So yeah, long-winded way of saying that I don't like I don't know how this is going to play out. You know, I want to work with the government and try to be as compliant as we can be, but at the same time, you know, realize that the world is fundamentally changed. And you know, like if I like Rod, you know, like Rod was born in Russia. What does it matter that he was born in Russia? He lives in like Thailand now. Why? Like it's these like it's yeah it's like a top-down command and control structure that is old and is no longer useful. And so I hope that, you know, the governments also realize that, hey, they're imposing all of these very strict rules on people that are inhibiting their ability to actually create and to, you know, help. This is like it's like imposing on our human creativity, and especially in something that is a domain that people feel so inspired about and people really want to, you know, play a part in. To impose this like crazy strict bureaucracy on top of this like fundamental like creativity that's just bursting out of people is like, this is crazy. This is insane to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. I think we've reached a point where, in any case, we're trying to fit all this new technological innovation into a really old box, something that is not meant to house, that was not built with mind to house what is being developed, and the level of creativity and freedom and the difference in the rules. It's not fitting in the box. And of course, those who orchestrate and lead the box want the box to exist. But I don't think everything that's going to come out that's being developed now fits in that box. And it's time to maybe reevaluate how we address things like international borders, international secrecy, um, even internal, even domestic wise. Um, but I think that's a much deeper conversation for a future topic that I would love to have you back on, as a matter of fact, on for this. But as we wrap up, since we have gone a little bit over time, are there any brief final? Actually, I have maybe one more question. How can the wider community, the DeSci community as a whole, help support MoonDAO?
Go for it, Mickey.
Yeah, give us your brain power. We want your brains. That's what we need. We're gonna take your brain tissues, sample them, grow little organoid structures, hook them up to BCIs, and then create an advanced AI to run our community. I'm joking, but we do want your ideas, and I think that the best way to get involved is step one: join us on Discord. That's our real that's our collective brain. That's where all the thinking and all the stuff really happens. We have town hall events that are great for people, especially when you're just getting your toes wet with MoonDAO. And we have guild meetings. So if you're specifically interested in the space engineering aspects that we've talked about today, we do have a space engineering guild. We also have a growth guild that focuses on marketing. We have a community guild, which is where I'm really focused a lot, which is just, improving our operations, our governance structures, increasing automation. And we also have the Dev Guild, where we do all types of development work, both Web 2 and Web 3. And so those things are growing. We've kind of still figuring out, the best way to handle these things, how to get around things like time zones. That's a big issue, being in a global community. But yeah, join us on Discord. Check out our website, MoonDAO. Follow us on Twitter. All the things. That's the best way to get started. And then, yeah, check out the stuff in ideation. Talk to people. We're really a networking community, and there are so many opportunities for you to get involved if you just, reach out to the right people in the community.
Absolutely. I want to read some of that. Follow them on Twitter, follow all their socials, reach out to Michi, Pablo, MoonDAO, Rod, and Manuel, who was here previously. Whether you be interested in the more scientific side of space travel, astrophysics, those kind of things, or the more social aspect, which is imperatively important to have a really cohesive community. I think MoonDAO stands as a good example of where DAOs have the potential to go, and even they're in their baby phases. But they've done really great things so far. So definitely do reach out to them. Go join the and help expand the virtual space that is MoonDAO, so we can start to expand the actual real frontier that is space outside of and existence out of this little blue rock that is spinning in space. So with all that being said, thank you both Pablo and Michi again for coming on and telling us, speaking to us about MoonDAO and all these things that are tangential to it. I hope you guys have a great weekend. And I will see the rest of you here for next week's episode of DeSci Rising. So with that being said, everybody have a great weekend and reach out, communicate, share, and just have a great time. All right, guys, take it easy.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Bye.
thank you. This is great.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thanks.